Imagine a man weighing over 300 pounds, his body reeking of the stench from a rotting, ulcerated leg. He sits on his throne with paranoid eyes, ready to sign the death warrant of anyone, even the wife who sleeps beside him. This isn't a movie monster. This is Henry VIII, England's most famous king and its most brutal nightmare. But would you believe that this rotting tyrant was once a golden prince, a man described as the handsomest in Europe, a star athlete, and the hope of a nation? How did a messiah turn into a serial killer on the throne? How did a quest for a son tear a country apart and leave a trail of headless bodies? Today, we are stripping away the royal glamour to look into the dark soul of Henry VIII. Buckle up. This story has twists that even Hollywood wouldn't dare invent. The story begins not with a king, but with a spare. Born in 1491, Henry was the second son. He lived in the shadow of his perfect older brother, Arthur, the Prince of Wales. While Arthur was trained to rule, Henry was spoiled by his mother and sisters. This childhood, surrounded by adoring women, planted the seeds for his future narcissism and his paradoxical cruelty toward women. His father, Henry VII, was a paranoid man who had seized the crown in a bloody civil war. He was terrified of losing the throne. But fate is a cruel writer. In 1502, Arthur suddenly died. The shockwave was massive. Henry, the carefree party boy, was suddenly thrust into the blinding spotlight. The weight of the entire Tudor dynasty crashed onto his shoulders. From that moment on, the fear of dying without a male heir began to haunt him, a ghost that would eventually consume his sanity. In 1509, the old king died. England breathed a sigh of relief. They welcomed the 7-year-old Henry VIII, like a sunrise after a long night. He was tall, strong, intelligent, and dangerously charming. His first act of independence? He married his dead brother's widow, Catherine of Aragon. It was a bold, reckless move. Catherine was a Spanish princess, 6 years older, beautiful and smart. The church forbade marrying a brother's wife, but Henry didn't care. He got a special dispensation from the Pope. Their wedding marked the beginning of a golden age. They were the power couple of Europe. Henry loved her, respected her, and even let her rule as regent when he went to war. But royal happiness is like glass shiny, but easily shattered. For the first few years, Henry lived like a medieval rock star. He threw lavish parties, dressed in gold, and jousted for glory. He wanted to be a warrior king, invading France just for the fame. While he was playing soldier abroad, Queen Catherine was actually defending England. She led the army that defeated the Scots at the Battle of Flodden, sending the bloody coat of the Scottish king to Henry as a love gift. A warrior wife. A golden king. It seemed perfect. But Catherine couldn't give Henry the one thing that mattered more than gold or victory, a living son. And this was the crack that would eventually bring the whole castle down. Darkness crept into the palace. Catherine got pregnant time and time again, but it always ended in tragedy. Miscarriages, stillbirths, a son who died after just 52 days. Out of all those pregnancies, only one child survived, a girl, Princess Mary. To a normal father, a daughter is a blessing. To a king terrified of civil war, no son meant the end of his dynasty. Henry began to believe God was punishing him. He obsessed over a Bible verse in Leviticus, "If a man shall take his brother's wife, they shall be childless." The verse echoed in his head like a curse. He looked at his loyal wife of 20 years and saw only the cause of his failure. Meanwhile, Henry had illegitimate sons with mistresses, proving he wasn't the problem. He needed a new wife. And right at that moment of doubt, a woman with dark, captivating eyes stepped onto the stage. Anne Boleyn didn't come to be a mistress. She came to be queen. Anne Boleyn wasn't the most beautiful woman at court, but she was the smartest. She played the most dangerous game of her life. When Henry tried to seduce her, she refused. "I will only give myself to my husband," she told him. This rejection drove Henry, a man who always got what he wanted, absolutely mad with desire. He wrote her love letters, begged, and promised her the world. To marry Anne, Henry needed a divorce. But the Pope refused. This is where Henry showed his true colors. He destroyed his loyal advisor, Cardinal Wolsey, for failing to get the divorce. He didn't care about loyalty or law. He wanted Anne, and he wanted a son. Would you trade your soul for your desire? Henry did. The standoff with the Pope led to a decision that shook the world. Under Anne's influence, Henry declared himself the supreme head of the Church of England. He cut ties with Rome. It was a geopolitical earthquake. Absolute power breeds absolute cruelty. To enforce his new power, he demanded everyone sign an oath. His best friend, Sir Thomas More, the brilliant author of Utopia, refused to betray his Catholic faith. Henry didn't hesitate. He had his best friend beheaded. More's head was stuck on a pike on London Bridge. The message was clear. No one says no to Henry VIII. In 1533, Henry married Anne Boleyn. Catherine of Aragon was banished to die in poverty. But karma works fast. Anne gave birth, and it was a girl. The future, Elizabeth I. Henry was devastated. Anne was not submissive like Catherine. She was fiery and jealous. Henry quickly grew tired of her. After she miscarried a son in 1536, her fate was sealed. Henry wanted her gone. He manufactured the most horrific lies that Anne had slept with 5 men, including her own brother. It was a sick fabrication, but Henry chose to believe it. On the 19th of May, 1536, Anne Boleyn knelt before a French swordsman. Henry had hired a specialist to ensure a clean cut. While her head rolled, Henry was already dressed for tennis, waiting to marry wife number 3. Within 24 hours of Anne's execution, Henry was engaged to Jane Seymour. She was the opposite of Anne. Quiet, submissive, and plain. While Henry enjoyed his honeymoon, he unleashed a reign of terror on England. He began the dissolution of the monasteries. He looted the church, tearing down centuries-old abbeys to steal their gold for his empty treasury. When the people rebelled in the Pilgrimage of Grace, Henry promised them mercy, then slaughtered their leaders. But Jane Seymour did the impossible. She gave Henry a legitimate son, Prince Edward. Henry wept with joy. But the price was Jane's life. She died of infection 2 weeks later. She was the only wife Henry truly mourned, perhaps because she gave him what he wanted and died before she could annoy him. In 1540, Henry married for politics. He chose a German princess, Anne of Cleves, based on a beautiful portrait. But when she arrived, Henry was repulsed. He called her a Flanders mare, a female horse, and claimed she smelled bad. The marriage was annulled after 6 months. Anne of Cleves was smart. She accepted the divorce quietly and lived a life of luxury as the king's sister. She was the lucky one. But Thomas Cromwell, the advisor who arranged the marriage, was executed for his mistake. On the same day Cromwell lost his head, the 9-year-old rotting Henry married his 5th wife, 7-year-old Catherine Howard. A disaster was waiting to happen. Catherine Howard was young, foolish, and trapped in a marriage with a decaying corpse. Henry was now obese, immobile, and reeked of sickness. Catherine sought comfort in the arms of a young courtier, Thomas Culpeper. When the affair was discovered, the old king broke down and cried. Then, his sadness turned to murderous rage. Catherine Howard was dragged to the block at age 19. She died screaming. Henry was no longer a king. He was a wounded beast, lashing out at everyone. His final wife, Catherine Parr, was more of a nurse than a queen. She was a smart widow who managed to survive Henry's temper and reunited him with his rejected daughters, Mary and Elizabeth. By 1547, Henry was a wreck. He had squandered England's wealth on useless wars. He was in constant agony. On his deathbed, he couldn't even speak, only squeezing the archbishop's hand. The tyrant who shook Europe died at 55, leaving the crown to his sickly 9-year-old son. Henry's legacy is a bloody mess. His son, Edward VI, died at 15. Mary, the daughter he ignored, took the throne and burned Protestants alive. And finally, Elizabeth, the daughter of Anne Boleyn. The child Henry was so disappointed in became Elizabeth I, the greatest monarch in English history. Fate has a dark sense of humor. Henry killed 2 wives, divorced 2, executed his friends, and broke the church, all for a son. But it was his unwanted daughter who built the Golden Age. The story of Henry VIII is a real-life horror movie. It shows us how absolute power can twist a human being. He went from a golden prince to a paranoid monster, consumed by his own ego. What do you think of Henry VIII? Was he a necessary evil to stabilize England, or just a murderous psychopath? Let me know in the comments. History isn't black and white, it's painted in blood red. Don't forget to like and subscribe to explore more of history's darkest secrets. Thanks for watching!